I just had a thing come up say your internet connection is unstable. Better not be.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It looks like we are 10 a.m. So we are going to get moving this morning. So welcome everyone to the Western Sponsorship Congress virtual session. I am Erin Gablish and I am going to be your host today. So this is session 2 of 6 as part of the virtual series. And I just want to extend a huge thank you to the team at TimeWise for putting together these sessions for us. This is such an important time for us in our industry and such an important opportunity for us to connect and obviously hear from the great leaders in our industry. So thank you so much for being with us this session. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, we are using Zoom webinar. So what that means is that you don't have to worry about your camera or your microphone because they are turned off for this session. But what we do ask is that you update your profile in Zoom. So make sure your first and last name are in there. Just that helps with us with this session today with Brent and Christy so that they know who's joined us today. And it also helps with the Q&A portion of the session. Regarding questions, if you have questions, if something comes to mind during the presentation, please feel free to ask those questions because we will address those. We're going to be monitoring them. But if not, we have set aside time at the end of the session as well. So we'll absolutely get to your questions and make sure Brent and Christy have the opportunity to answer those. The session is being recorded today, and in a few days, stay tuned because you will see that come out to you if you are a paid registrant of this session. So about our speakers. So Christy Cruz by day spends her time at TELUS, and by night, she says that she dreams and strategizes about the ifs, whens, and whats of sponsorship. Brent Brudies is the president CEO of Partnership Group Sponsorship Specialists. And today they are going to be talking to us about the best and worst sponsorship deals. And really the intent of the session today is for you to be able to take forward some of the information that you gain to build those awesome proposals and really ignite yourself and your teams into as we head into 2021 so you can really hit the ground running. So that is it for me. I am going to pass it over to Christy and Brent.
Great, thanks so much, Erin. We are so excited to be presenting this session, and we are truly honored that you've agreed to come on this journey with us. Our promise to you is that we will share our experience in a fun and conventional way. So let's get started. To begin, now many of you may know that he's also known as Kalinya, the Wicked Witch who rules over the Munchkins in the East in the land of Oz, and he is their unquestioned leader. Although I think there may be some stormy clouds for Kalinya, the Oz Chronicle Daily reported him as quite clever and having the telekinetic power of throwing people into the sky. Very good indeed. However, the article also mentioned, now not me, mind you, this was the article, went on to say that he has become easily irritated and is constantly scheming on ways to get more power. They noted that he's hired a PR firm to help him regain his standing as the people's choice for Wicked Witch of the East. And well, you know me, I'm Christy Cruz, also known as Mombi, a key strategist and occasionally political opportunist in the land of Oz. My powers are transformation and disguise, and I seek out of control of the highest power, those behind the throne. Although I'm mostly careful with my power, I do sometimes get caught up in Kalinya's schemes. This session would be one of those times. So if there's anything you don't like or anything you don't agree with in this presentation, Please send all complaints to Kalinya, as he was the likely culprit of everything we're going to talk about today. Now let's have some more fun and let's follow the yellow brick road to slide 2. Do companies need to have sponsorship in their marketing mix? You may be surprised to hear. You may be surprised to hear that the short answer is no. And during this session, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through and talk about these pieces. In the Land of Oz, sponsorships have 4 basic components. It's not to say that these are the only 4, but I believe that these are the 4 most critical pieces of the puzzle. 1, drive business value. I would normally say drop the mic here, because yes, value to rights ratios, cost per acquisition, and the quality and quantity of opportunity to new revenue stream is the most important factor. And yes, this includes the dollars that your organization may be giving to a competitor through the services that they use. 2, drive brand lift. And I'm going to put in there 3, uniqueness as well. The cost per reach, a marked increase in brand affinity and awareness surveys and uniqueness, meaning once in a lifetime opportunities, front of line access for customers, and key differentiation from competitors are all key factors that need to be present. Number 4, I think is important, but there's a key to that. The relevance to local community and social impact, and the overall fit to the brand's social purpose goals, super important. The potential to leave a legacy, also important. And interest from media, easy to explain, and for potential customers to quickly understand and choose your product over another. Now, as we move to slide 2, donations over sponsorships. I think this is a very important. It's getting a bit murky, isn't it? For me, the difference is easy to define if you keep the 4 components top of mind. With a donation, in the most basic sense, it should focus on creating material community impact. Outside of corporate foundations and C-suite relationship commitments, most organizations have moved away from this model, as the benefits are limited and customers expect more from brands. A sponsorship, which I would argue is what most of us are doing, perhaps thinking it's a donation, is the most effective way for a brand to tell its story and fight for those limited marketing funds. Sponsorships must have all 4 components to get in the line at the gate. And if you want to get to the front of the line, they must all be done exceptionally well. Well, I see that Kalinya is getting a little restless.
Christy, I think you're froze there.
So, and there are many
We're just going to wait for our friend, the Wicked Witch from the East, Mombi, to return here. And we'll, but really what she was touching on right now is, do the companies really need to have sponsorship in their marketing? And when we really look at it, the situation is that they don't. They have lots of alternatives right now. So they have digital, they have social, they have traditional mediums, they have PR, they have GR, all those exist. So sponsorship isn't a given. So we need to be aware of that when we're going down this yellow brick road and when we're moving towards there. And there's Mombi, she's back.
Thank you, Brent. I'm not sure what happened there. I think where we left off is that the sponsorship tool is resource intensive, expensive, and often requires incredible levels of cooperation between business units. They carry inherent risk as you're aligning your brand with that of a third party who you likely haven't vetted as thoroughly as you would somebody who's joining your corporate board or a supplier. And this year, we've seen firsthand the tricky situation that can arise between government, charity partners, and brands. Will this have an effect on future of the sponsorship? You tell me. Having acknowledged that sponsorships are neither integral to the key operations of an organization and are not without risk, when done right, sponsorships can play a key role in the organization's marketing mix. Sponsorships uniquely offer an efficiency of spend through measurable benefits, from on-site attendance to broadcast to unique hospitality assets and interesting opportunities to engage directly with a brand or a product. Now, if I was a betting witch, don't believe everything you hear, I would place my bet on these 3 challenges. Let's see if you agree. Virtual mediums and their place in the new normal. We've seen a rise of tools to support an alternate virtual universe, and although the experience is slightly awkward, like dropping off of a call, and not as good in person, the tools will catch up, and the savings experienced by organizations in discretionary spend may pose a future challenge to travel, meals, and entertainment costs. So having said that, what I'd like to do is move on to the next slide. So like the Wizard of Oz, sponsorships have to have a couple of different pieces. One being courage. The lion, who brings the courage to innovate. The scarecrow, who brings the brains and process to make it happen. The Tin Man, who brings the heart and the community impact. And most importantly, a Dorothy, who has magic shoes and the ability to align all of their strengths together. If I was to give you one tip this year, I would say really beef up on these 3 skills in your team: project management, communication skills, and the ability to think outside the box. So now let's turn it over to Brent and have some real fun with this.
I'm not sure this is going to be all fun and games, Christy, because we're going to take a look at some examples, as we promised, of some of the best and the worst. And I'm going to start with one. And my intent here is we're going to cover off 5 or 6 different examples. If you've got questions about these, be sure to just type them in, and Erin will get control of those and be able to ask those questions at the end, or you can save them up for the end. Or you may have examples you want to share at the end. So feel free to do that as well. But the first one I want to look at is just an example of, there's some courage being taken here when we look at the yellow brick road side, and there's a little bit of brains, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot. And at the end of it comes down to that there is a heart to a certain extent. And Dorothy's not going to, as you're going to see, quite be able to bring this one all together. But this was an investment that Scotiabank had made with the Cricket Association in Canada. The right demographic for them, Southeast Asia, new Canadians playing cricket. Scotiabank, as all FIs really want to do, is reach that important target market. So becoming a key partner into the cricket world in Canada was a great move for Scotiabank. It was strategic, it was all of those sorts of things. And they were into an investment with an organization, that they thought was good and ready to go. And the end result was that it wasn't. They were spending about 160 grand a year over multiple years. And in that, they were getting some activation opportunities, they were getting some signage opportunities, some digital opportunities, and all of those were to be in place and running throughout the year and added as they went along. Well, after the first 3 months, Scotiabank had no recognition whatsoever anywhere, whether it was online or at events. So they sat down with their partner, with the property from the Cricket Association, and said, hey, we need to get some of this stuff up. And the Cricket Association just said, hey, just leave us be. We'll get there. And so Scotiabank, had that heart that Christy was talking about, and decided, okay, yeah, we'll let her go. So at the end of 6 months, there still wasn't anything up. So that was when Scotiabank came back and said, you know what, we can see that you're probably overwhelmed. You don't have the background to activate and to deliver on the assets and fulfill on everything that you promised, not just to us, but probably to all your sponsors. So we would like to provide you with a full-time employee at no cost to you. We'll pay for it. And we will make sure that that person will come in and they'll work for you. We'll pay them, and they'll probably be one of our staff to begin with, but we will put them in place to support you so that you have somebody taking care of this, not just for us as a sponsor, but for all your partners. And the Cricket Association basically said, you know what, this is our program. This is our game. We will run it. We don't need your meddling in this. And as by the end of the year, nothing had happened and Scotiabank walked. So they, of course, they had a clause in their contract to be able to get out of that deal. But when we stop to look at it, when your partner's coming up to you to provide you with support, you need to actually listen to them. You need to be able to suck it up and swallow and be able to say, okay, we're not equipped to do what we need to do, and we would welcome your assistance. Those are the types of things that we need to do if we're traveling down the yellow brick road and want to be successful. We need to work in partnership with our partners, and we need to actually support them, as Scotiabank had indicated. The second example is also a financial institution and a sport organization, and it was quite a similar scenario. Sask Central, which is the overarching body for these credit unions in Saskatchewan, they had done a province-wide sponsorship with Saskatchewan Soccer. And this was one of those similar situations to the cricket and the Scotiabank deal, was that it ended up that the Saskatchewan Soccer didn't have the infrastructure, didn't have the staffing to be able to deliver on this. And in fact, this is the most wonderful experience that any property could receive. They didn't go out and pitch Sask Central. They didn't even prospect Sask Central. Sask Central picked up the phone and called them and said, we've done a whole bunch of research and we'd like to partner with you. And here's how much money we have, for you. It's about $300,000 a year between activation and rights fees. And we would like to do a 3-year deal with you and roll it out. And of course, what did Saskatchewan Soccer say? Absolutely, we're in. And the end result was that they weren't equipped to be able to deliver any or all of the elements that Sask Central was looking for. Sask Central stepped up to the plate. They ironically did as Scotiabank had offered to the Cricket Association. They saw that they needed to actually supply an employee, in this case it was a part-time employee, to be able to help Sask Soccer get the fulfillment up and running, organized, not just for Sask Central, but for all the sponsors that were associated with Sask Soccer. So this looks a lot more like success in the long run. Some errors were made at the front end. We saw that Sask Central probably didn't do their due diligence to find out what the organization looked like in depth, and the ability to actually deliver on any of the benefits that they were being presented with. And at the same time, Sask Central failed to declare that at the front, Sask Soccer failed to identify that at the front end, saying, we're really excited about delivering this program, but we need to find staffing. And they should have been actually saying internally between their board and their staff, you know what, this is a stepping stone for us. This is an opportunity. There's some revenue here. We can hire a person, which will allow us to do fulfillment. And that person may also be a sponsorship salesperson, which they didn't have at the time. So that would have been those issues that I saw at the front end that could have made this a disastrous partnership. but it turned out fantastic because both parties worked together. They were able to deliver the results that Sask Centro was looking for over the 3-year term, and were able to actually build infrastructure within their own organization. And that ends up being a great story and an outcome for everybody. So the next one that I want to look at is actually, ironically, also a Saskatchewan one. It was SaskTel and their involvement with the Canada Games. And this was a few years back, is when the Canada Games were being involved in Saskatchewan. They were in Regina. And SaskTel, like many organizations, and I'm just using SaskTel as the example here, but a lot of organizations are big, they're powerful, and properties quite often will give in to their demands solely to get the money. And we need to understand that that's not the way a partnership works. So in this case scenario, SaskTel had done, the Canada Games had gone and done a clear and decisive process through discovery sessions. They understood what SaskTel was looking for. And one of the things SaskTel wanted was the association to the volunteer program. But as the game said, that, you know, that's not your shtick that you hang stuff on. That's not your, you know, that's not what you guys do. That's another company. And you know that other company has been involved in volunteer programs for everything from Saskatchewan Games to local games to charity organizations and the Globe Theatre and things like that. And the end result was that SaskTel, that's what they wanted because somebody else had it. And they pushed pretty hard. And what the games told them was, well, it's first one to the plate, you know, because the other guys also have a proposal in front of them. So that happened. The other team, the other group, the other company actually ended up getting the volunteer program. So SaskTel worked a little with the Canada Games. They developed a further discovery sessions, and they determined exactly what SaskTel needed, wanted, and what their ROI measurements were. And it was a perfect presentation. The total value of the program was about $1 million. And the games were offering it to SaskTel at about a 25% discount. It had a lot of activation opportunities. It had a lot of branding. It had a lot of product testing, a lot of product profile. It had partners with Ericsson and with a couple other suppliers. So there was exclusivities over 12 or 13 different lines of business that SaskTel operated at the time. So it was a pretty big deal for SaskTel, and it was allowing them to block out a lot of their competition in different areas. Some which they, you know, had no competition, and in some that they had lots of competition. So it allowed them to block most of that out. The offer, the value was $1 million. The offer was, you can take all of this for $750,000. SaskTel, because they were powerful, and I'm using SaskTel as an example, but there are lots of companies that are in a powerful position like this because they're large and an organization needs the money. They said, great, we love the proposal. We think it's fantastic, but we only have $500,000. We know we told you we'd have 750, but we only have 500. Take it or leave it. And so the games stepped back and they said, we're going to leave it. So you have a choice, SaskTel. You can either go back and get $750,000 and take this deal, or we will build you a new program, but you're not getting this program that's worth $1 million at half price. We're going to build you a program that's worth $500,000. It won't have all those lines of exclusivity. It won't have this. It won't have that. And it was interesting because this was a sport organization, games, that actually stood up and said, it's not right. You don't get this for $500,000. You can have a $500,000 program, but it's not this one. So SaskTel actually went back and got the $750,000. So it was interesting from that point of view. And it shows clearly that it goes beyond that. It's having the courage that the lion was looking for in The Wizard of Oz. It had that courage to stand up and say, this is what we can do. And this is what we can do for 500, and this is what we can do for 750. And you know, that's what worked. And so that's just another example of where we need to be going. We need to stand up to strong brands, but also to strong properties that push smaller brands around. So the next example I'm going to use is RBC and the city of Sarnia and the naming rights on what was at the time the RBC building. It's the arena that's there that you can see. And the OHL team plays there inside that arena. It was a deal, and it was worked out, and it was about $40,000 a year in the naming rights to the building. And ironically, a few years after the deal was done, we were doing work for the city of Sarnia, of which part of it was to reassess that valuation and determine what the real market value was, so forth and so on. And it was right in that ballpark of 40,000. So it's important to understand that. But here's what happened. The mayor of Sarnia, when the deal was done, decided that that wasn't what it should be. It should be worth a lot more money. And therefore, he took to the media to say, this deal is awful. RBC makes lots and lots of money, and that's just not right. They should be giving us more money for this. This is a bad deal. They've taken us. And that is not the way to start a partnership. And you can believe at the end of the contract, RBC didn't renew. In fact, they didn't even sit down for discussions. If it was me thinking about it, the first thing I'd be thinking about is risk management. Even if we negotiate a new deal, the same mayor is probably not going to be happy no matter what it is. And ultimately, RBC walked away from the renewal, and the scenario that came from that was that the city had to go out and find a new deal, which they did. And ironically, the hockey club got RBC involved directly with the hockey club, and the hockey club received an onslaught of funding and money through that sponsorship. But it goes to show you that, you know, when somebody has no brains and wants to speak out of turn without any information on the true value assessment or anything else, and to make a comment like that, you have to expect there to be issues and problems. So the last one that I want to look at, and then we're going to do one more, and that's more of a discussion type thing, or putting some thoughts in your mind, and then we'll open up the floor. But what I really want to look at here is that this is the Festival of Montreal Film Festival. And the Air Canada had been involved with this for a long time. They have been the presenting sponsor of the Montreal Film Festival. And they were great partners. It was a great partnership between everybody. And the end result was that what happened was that in 1 year, the Montreal Film Festival came and said, hey, we want to, or we plan on, not that we want to, we are going to be premiering the Karla Homolka film. There's people in this audience today, I know, that know who Karla Homolka would be, and the heinous crimes that she committed, her and her husband of the day, and that just the awful, awful things that they did. And she had been put in prison as a result of it, and she cut a deal with the justice system to get a shorter sentence, to implicate her husband. So ultimately, she wrote a book that then became a movie. And the Montreal Film Festival believed that this was a film and a movie that needed to be showcased. And so they decided that was going to be their big premiere film. And in doing so, they announced that this is, or said to Air Canada, this is who it's going to be. This is what our opening film or our premiere film is going to be for this year. And Air Canada said, that ain't going to happen. Not under our watch. You're not screening that film as long as we're the presenting sponsor. This is crazy. We don't want our name attached to it. And the film festival looked at Air Canada and said, fine, we're filming. We're going to screen the film. If you don't want to be a part of it, you're welcome to walk away, because you don't own us. You don't pay us a sponsorship marketing fee to run our board, to run our organization, tell us what films we can or cannot screen, or anything else. You buy a sponsorship to be associated and affiliated to us and run with our halo and drive traffic to your business or build your brand through that. If you don't think you're going to achieve those goals, then you're welcome to walk away. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. Air Canada said, we're done. They walked away. They received their money back based on a pro rating. You know, they had had some exposure already, so it was prorated. But the end result that came from that was that I look at this as, you know, one of those scenarios, and I'm not taking sides on whether it was right to premiere or screen the Carla Homolka film, or whether it was right for Air Canada to walk away. But what I do recognize very clearly here is that both organizations had ethical beliefs, they had standards, they had everything that was within their own organization, but the two of them differed. They both got what they wanted, which was Air Canada chose not to be related to the premiere screening of a Carla Homolka film, and the festival got to do what they wanted to do, which was screen that, premiere that screening. So the end result was that both of them made their own decisions. Both of them made their own outcomes, and they went from that distance. They moved their distance away. And that is what we need to understand, because that takes the courage to say, this is what we stand for. It takes the brains to know that this is either in your own world is the right thing to screen or is not the right thing to screen, and we don't want to be associated with it. And it was also take some heart to understand that the other person has their own opinions. And then the Dorothy scenario came into that. They both went their own ways. And so that's, you know, another one of those scenarios that when we're really walking down this yellow brick road, the scenarios that were successful in here, the bits and pieces or the whole that were successful were because Dorothy was there. She was able to bring together all the parts, the courage, the brains, and that innovation that comes with the courage side, and the brains to make it happen. And of course, the heart to understand that there is more to this than just money. So when we stop to take a look at that, of those 5 examples, those are the things, as Christy pointed out, that are critical to be part of it. So when I look at this last one that's up here, it takes something that happened several years ago and something that's happened on our doorsteps right now. And that is the, and I've mentioned this one before, but the Buckets for Cure that was done by KFC and the Susan J. Komen Foundation in the United States, which was the selling of pink buckets of chicken, where Susan J. Komen Foundation had built, which would have been equivalent to what was the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation here in Canada, now the Canadian Cancer Society. But they had built a reputation on the #1 combatant against breast cancer is healthy eating and healthy lifestyles. And then they turned around to actually do a deal with KFC and deep fried chicken. I mean, KFC's answer was, if you look really closely at that bucket, guess what? That's grilled chicken. It's not deep fried, it's grilled. We thought about it. Well, who in their right mind goes into a KFC and orders grilled chicken? You go there because it's fried chicken. And it took, well, there were 5,500 letters sent to the Komen Foundation, and Breast Cancer Action pushed against this, plus the onslaught from at the time, which was really just Facebook, because Twitter had not come into its existence, Instagram and others were not even around, basically. But that onslaught that was created made a big impact, and they canned the deal. I asked the question, what about Fries for Good? And what about McDonald's and the program that they've just completed as of November 30th and had run earlier in the year to raise money, or initially for the Canadian Red Cross, raising over $1 million through people buying fries, and then did it again for their own charity, the Ronald McDonald Houses. That $1 million that was raised for Red Cross in May was done in 2 weeks. from people buying fries. So the question then becomes, is this the right type of sponsorship that we should be doing, whereby we encourage people to eat quote unquote unhealthy products so that we can give money away? Well, there's things that you have to kind of take a look at and understand. And both KFC and McDonald's are disproportionately located. Their restaurants are located in low-income communities, especially those of color, for very specific reasons. These are the low-income neighborhoods that are underserved by grocery stores and quality foods and healthier options. So people are going to these places, and this will allow them to drive more traffic, more sales, and generate more business. So I'm not going to tell you whether this is a good deal or a bad deal, but would love during our discussion portion to have people's thoughts, to have people's insights. That's just before I turn it back over to Christy to wrap up for us and give us our takeaways. Christy, have you got anything to add on that last one, or was I able to cover most of it off?
No, I think you did a great job, Brent.
Thank you, my favorite witch. So I will turn it back to Christy.
Great, thanks everyone. So I think what we want to do now is just leave you with some key takeaways. And those takeaways are these 4 things that you're seeing on the screen here. But as well, I think that when people ask me the question, what is the biggest challenge that you might see with sponsorship? What are the challenges that are coming up? Might be a question that you have. I think it's really important to mention these 3 items because they have a lot to do with what we've been talking about, specifically the examples that Brent has raised. One of them, of course, we talked about, which was the virtual medium and the rise of virtual mediums. But the second is this idea of the rise of social purpose. And I think that has a lot to do with a question that we want to talk to you and engage with you on around McDonald's and the KFC pink bucket. We've seen a continued trend towards consolidation and efficiency, leading to the resurfacing of what we're calling signature programs, whereby an organization focuses its efforts on creating, aligning, and integrating their spends, usually leading to a bigger, more robust, and often logistically complex signature program. The rise of social purpose adds another lens to an already complex sponsorship model. And as you can see with things like Fries for Good, or specifically in what I think is the most telling example, is the pink bucket. The pink bucket really was probably a good idea, or people thought it was a good idea, until there was another additional layer around social purpose built in. And then all of a sudden it started to really go off the rails. The third one is also tied to that it factor that's hard to gauge, the continued challenge around customer sophistication and the importance of reputation. And so issues involving charities became top of mind with consumers this year. And additionally, there remains a larger reputation challenge as we see through the Edelman Trust Barometer. If anyone hasn't had a chance to look at that specific study, it's really important, and we can share the link with you. But public trust in charities continues to decrease, and trust in corporations continues to increase. And so will this level the playing field, leaving some to weigh the complexity of a relationship with a third party versus creating and activating their own programs, using their own resources and their own standards? So I think the ongoing challenge with differentiation, category exclusivity, and the general understanding of the idea of reciprocity is also a key challenge. But I'm an optimistic witch. And so I'd say that sponsorships will thrive if they are based in true reciprocity, if they can outperform advertising expectations. Because what you might not know is that sponsorships compete directly with advertising budgets. And the good news is that 58% of Canadians are actively trying to black out advertising. So it's getting harder to break through using that advertising medium alone. And last but not least, the realization that although they need to be grounded in community benefit, the decision is always with business relevance and driving new business revenue. So what you see here on the key takeaways are things that you might have already known. Listening, super important. Can't underestimate how important it is to listen to what your partner's needs are. Sometimes we're really good at hiding those needs. And sometimes you have to really look through and ask follow-up questions. You need to ensure you can deliver. So aligning the sponsorships with your core capabilities, with your capacities, is going to ensure that you can deliver every time. Measuring key successes. We all know that measuring is what matters. You measure what matters and you're successful. But it's really a little bit further than that. It's also about analyzing those key successes. So sometimes providing the data isn't enough. You really need to put on your strategic hat and help the brand to understand why that data is important, how it relates to their business. And then communications, as we talked about earlier, project management and communications, being able to clearly articulate your idea in an easy and easily digestible way is extremely important. You wouldn't believe how often clarity of thought is what saves the deal. So now we move on to the questions and answers, and I'll just pop it right over back to Erin.
All right, thank you so much. What a great presentation. I love the analogy to the Wizard of Oz and getting, all of the participants today really thinking about courage and brains and heart and how they can incorporate that into their proposals and their relationships and their partnerships. Christy, I want to revisit a slide from earlier in the presentation just to make sure that everybody didn't miss this important information. But what do you see as the key challenges to sponsorship?
I think the key challenge to sponsorship is really the graying and blurring of the lines. I think it's become extremely difficult to understand what is a donation, what is a sponsorship, what is a cause marketing piece of your program, what is communications and internal employee engagement. What do consumers want to see? That's another extremely difficult challenge. As consumers get more sophisticated, it's no longer, the way forward is no longer to just have a community component. It needs to be built into something called social purpose, which is a new catchphrase that talks about creating products that make people's lives simpler. And social purpose is very tricky. It's a journey, and it's about understanding how you can leave communities in a better place than when you got there. Now that's easy to say, but it's not easy to do. And a lot of the sponsorships of the past really barely touch on those pieces.
Awesome, great, thank you so much. This is really interesting because there is a clear line between sponsorships and donations. So then, and actually a great question came in, can you have both? And is there sometimes this blurring of the line in a relationship overall?
You want
either or, whoever would like to take that question, or if you
Sure.
both have thoughts, please go ahead.
Well, I'll start and Christy can jump back in. I would say that there's the definition, as you said, Erin, between donation and sponsorship is very clear. Yeah. But as Christy pointed out, it is a blurred line and it will continue to be blurred. Can you do both? I absolutely believe you can. And I think the shift that's really happening is the shift. There's the term sponsorship, there's the term community investment, there's the term donation, there's the term partnership. And what we're seeing, the true successful programs are when they're fully integrated. And that's closer to a partnership than anything else. And that can include a component that might have a sponsorship component, some marketing, some advertising, some PR, some GR, but also a philanthropic or donation component. And the example I would use is one in Regina, Saskatchewan, and it was the Regina Palliative Care Bereavement Center. And there was a company that came along and wanted to put a naming right on the building. They had already budgeted for a block of money, $500,000. The value of the naming right for this bereavement center concept inside a building was, worth $20,000 a year, and $20,000 a year, and it was going to be for a 10-year deal, and that was $200,000. So they paid $20,000 a year for 10 years for the naming rights and the associated assets that went with that. But they still had this other $300,000, so they wrote a check and a gift at the front end of the deal as a charitable gift. These were completely separate, but it was all married into one program. Yeah. And because the people that were with RPCI at the time, Regina Palliative Care Inc., they actually stopped, and going back to what Christy talked about for those key takeaways was the leading to listening and understanding what they were trying to achieve. They had this amount of money, they wanted to make an impact, and it wasn't just on a naming right. They wanted programming to be run, but they also wanted this to give all of this money and make an impact. And the charity or the not-for-profit went ahead and built what was needed. And truly, there was a charitable component. And that was separate and clear from what the sponsorship component was. Christy?
Yeah, and I think one of the key pieces is just realizing that good ideas are really, and honestly and respectfully, I say this, a dime a dozen, and that every cause is a great cause. And that galas and golf tournaments are, in my personal opinion, where brands go to die. And I think we just really need to move on to the next level. And I know that's not easy. Trust me, I've been, career in this, my longtime career in this field. It's not easy to innovate and to do something new. But if your organization is pitching to a brand with an idea that was done 20 years ago, is likely not something that's going to be effective in this new world. And there are, I know that there'll be people who don't like my last comment around galas and golf tournaments. And some of them are successful. But I think that there's a handful of ideas that are new, that are innovative, and that will be executed to perfection. And I think that those are the ones that are going to deliver new customers and increase brand revenue. And that's what we're looking for. So I think it's really about understanding that the old world doesn't work in the new world. And moving to a new model is what needs to happen. I think every brand right now has a community component to their sponsorships. That doesn't mean that it's a community donation. It just means that there is a community component, something that we can talk to consumers about to say, this is how we're making our community better through this sponsorship of something like Hockey Canada. So I think it's really important for us to start thinking as a bigger bucket, whereby sponsorships perhaps lead, and then donations and community investments support.
Yeah, awesome, great. Thank you so much to both of you. And I love this lens that you've painted for our participants today around this courage and heart and brains. So what do you see as the biggest obstacle of being able to bring all of those together?
Well, I'll take that one, Brent. I think the biggest obstacle is that we've become operationally excellent. Just around the globe, everywhere you look, we can fill out forms and check boxes like no one's business. We have operational excellence, but I'm worried that that's come at a cost of strategic innovation and strategic excellence. So it's less about creating the perfect form, the perfect event, the perfect activation, and more about the ideas that lead and are generated to ensure that that is a unique, once in a lifetime opportunity for brands to put in front of their customers. So I really think that the issue is that we're driving, perhaps we've over-indexed on operational efficiency and excellence at the cost of strategic innovation.
Interesting.
And I would agree wholeheartedly. The biggest stumbling block we have is following the programs that we've always done, whether we have had a pandemic or not. The pandemic has at least made us open our eyes and made us change in the way we do things to some extent. And my biggest fear is that it will go back to the way it was. But it's the stumbling block is that lack of innovation, is that lack of, okay, well, we've been able to achieve this, 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 and this. Let me, as Christy said, tick those boxes. And it's overcoming that and taking the creativity. And whether you're an organization that has the ability to do that in-house, which most do, sit down, think about it, or outsource it. Get some help from consultants. Get some help from the sector. If you're SMC, if you're a company or a property that's not a charity or a fundraiser or a organization that would relate to something like an Association of Fundraising Professionals, AFP. if you're going to SMCC, use SMCC, Sponsorship Marketing Council of Canada. Use those members to brainstorm, pick your brains. At the same time, if you're a member of AFP and you're on the charity side, use those tools that are available. Think differently, truly think differently. I think that's the biggest stumbling block, is what I always term, and it's not my term, I stole it, but the 7 most expensive words in the English language, but we've always done it that way. And I think that's what we need to overcome. I also want to address one other thing, and it was something that Christy mentioned, and Aaron, you asked the question, and we differentiated between philanthropy and donations and sponsorship. And then Christy spoke really clearly, both at the front end and in here, about the fact that, you know, sponsorship is taking money from advertising too. And advertising is a competitor as well. And there's a gray area that's there. And there's a fellow that's with the CFL, Tyler Mazaru, and he's the Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer. And I wanted to use a quote that I had put in one of my Tuesday morning commentaries recently, and quoted Tyler on this. But what Ty said was that, you see, advertising media to reach you, use advertising media to reach the audience that you want to target with a message about your product or your service. You use sponsorship to show the audience what you, the brand, and they, the consumer, have in common. And so if we truly look at that, whether that's advertising versus sponsorship or philanthropy versus sponsorship, it comes back to that words that Christy just said about creating an experience that is different, is unique. And that's what sponsorship is about.
Yeah, great, perfectly said. So I'm going to go to another question that come in from one of our participants today. It says that we are in a small nonprofit. How could we ever really realize brand lift for a sponsor? And can you give us an example of when that's worked?
Well, I'll start with that one. I think that what every organization, large or small, I don't care whether you're the Toronto Maple Leafs or whether you are the Canadian Cancer Society, large national charity, or whether you are a small not-for-profit that nobody knows, you all own assets that somebody wants. You own an audience that somebody wants. You just need to find the right people, and they will pay to get it. So the example I will give you is that, and I'm sure this is a household name for absolutely everybody that's on this call today. It is the Canadian Association of Mountain Guides. I'm sure everybody knows about them and is a member of that association. Like, let's face it, none of us have ever heard of them. We had never heard of them before they approached us for some help. But in this scenario is, you know what? They're fractured. They have members in all parts of the country. They're obviously, the bulk of them are in Western Canada. You've got mountain guides who are independent, entrepreneurial people who hate to follow rules. People who scale mountains follow the rules of the mountain. They don't follow the rules that are on paper. And so the end result is, this is a pretty dysfunctional group. And they were generating nationally about $15,000 worth of sponsorship a year. That was it. And they stopped to look, and they built out an asset, and they determined what they had to sell. They hired a great guy that's doing sales for them part-time. And now, and this is, I'm going to be brutally honest, this didn't happen overnight. It happened over the last 5 or 7 or 10 years, but they're generating in excess of $100,000 a year. And they're doing that because they're able to deliver results, provide that brand lift, provide that engagement, provide the opportunities for the brands that they partnered with. No, they're not talking to the RBCs and the Teluses and people like that. They're talking to people inside their sector that want to reach either the audience of the guides themselves, or, prior to pandemic, the rich Americans coming up from Houston that are mountain climbing. And so know who your audience is, and you can help a brand reach and deliver that lift that you're talking about, even if you're a small organization.
Yeah, great. Christy, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think it's real. I think size really does matter, and it's mattered for a very long time. And I think one of the key things is that People see the logos and the buildings of downtowns, and they spend approximately 20 hours is the average that a charity or nonprofit will spend applying to one of these big brands. But what I think the issue is that exactly what the participant has said. They can't actually deliver on the results. And so what happens is that the expectations of a blue chip company are not going to be able to match the ability for a small nonprofit to activate. So you're looking at the size doesn't correlate. And what needs to happen is that smaller brands and smaller properties need to look at smaller brands. So as an example, perhaps it's local or stores that are in your community. Maybe it's your local dry cleaner. And I always think that the best example that I've ever seen around size specifically is when a small nonprofit is trying to do a coat collection, as an example. And instead of going to the bigger brands, they go to their local dry cleaner who happens to have 2 dry cleaner operations in that community. And they ask them if they would be able to dry clean the coats for them so then they could continue with their coat drive. So it's about a size match. If you're going to spend 20 hours applying to a big brand and you know you can't deliver, that really isn't a win-win for anyone. It's actually really poor, because what's going to happen is that your brand will be affected as a small nonprofit. I think the other piece is that we really need to start thinking about this whole idea of just because I can apply for funding, I should. And we need to change our thinking around driving behaviors that actually will get results versus the activity of applying. Because I think what that does is it limits the amount, it's an opportunity cost, limiting the amount of time your team can spend thinking of strategies. Instead, they're spending their time on operational excellence of filling out application forms, which they have 0 chance of getting. And if they do happen to get it, they can't actually activate. So it's just a lose-lose situation all around. Yeah. I think it's really important for us to kind of take a look strategically, specifically for small to medium-sized charities, to look at membership in a much stronger way. And if I was younger.
Witches never grow old. Look, see, it froze when you said, yeah. If I was younger. There's 3, so that is me and my little munchkins controlling, right?
Well, if I was younger, what I would do is I would basically reset some of the time spent by smaller and medium-sized charities to look at membership in a different way and really kind of focus their efforts on driving stronger membership and raising revenue that way versus this hamster wheel of applying in for grants that are likely either never going to happen or will be very difficult to activate at the level that the brand needs it to be activated on.
Yeah, very well said. And I think obviously you guys demonstrated that in the presentation with several of the examples that you've provided today. One more just very quick, fun question is, so obviously lots of examples provided today. What would both of you say is your, what's the best one to you and why?
Wow. I'll give you some time, Christy, and I will, that's not easy. I can think of a whole bunch of great ones, but I'm going to take 2 that we had nothing to do with because I just think they're great events, they're great programs. And one is the Scotiabank Scene Card. If you know, Scotiabank was targeting an 1834 demo. Who goes to movies? You know, the 1834 demographic does. That happens to be the highest attrition rate demographic for banks and financial institutions. You know, kids leave home, they open up their own bank account. They don't want to bank where their parents banked. Then on top of that, boy meets girl at college, they get married, boy moves account over to girl's bank, you know. So the attrition rate for that 1834 demo was huge. So Scotiabank's going, how can I get more bank accounts opened and how can I retain these people better? So they partnered with Cineplex and they created the Scotiabank Scene Card. In the first year of that program, they signed up 100,000 new bank accounts, like an unheard of number of new bank accounts opened in a single year in Canada. And number 2, they half the attrition rate for that 1834 demo in that group of people that were scene card members. So they got new people in and they kept them. Wow. So that to me is truly the epitome of a great sponsorship. It works for both of them. It drives more traffic. It drives repeat business to the property, the Cineplex. Everybody wins. And the other one, a more modern one, I think, and this is just the professionalism that this was done with, the extenuating circumstances that this was done with. But if you're talking about great partnerships, you cannot leave out in today's world the Seattle Kraken and their naming rights on their building. And this is the new NHL team out of Seattle. Mm-hmm. And the building is the naming rights, the money is coming from Amazon, but it's not the Amazon Center. And most of us already know, though, it is the Climate Pledge Arena. And that is a Amazon saying, here's our, and I don't know the numbers, but here's our 20, 40, 60 million a year for the next 20 years, whatever it is. Here's what we're paying, but we don't want our name on the building. We want Climate Pledge Arena because we're committing publicly, and this comes back to what Christy was saying about social innuendo and social commitment, that they're talking about by 2030, they want to have no carbon footprint for any of their vehicles. So their business as a whole, no carbon footprint. They've required the Kraken to build a zero carbon footprint building, operating wise. So they're, those are the types of things. So they're kind of putting their money where their mouth is, and their name's not on the building, but people know that it's Amazon. So they're getting what they need, and they're holding themselves accountable. So those would be, I know you asked for one, whoever it was that asked the question, but those would be my probably two favorites, one from several years ago and one from more modern.
Perfect. Christy, do you have one?
Well, I think this is really Brent's, a specialty, but I think from a reputation standpoint, I think it's really important. And I think reputation and brand right now is one of the key hot topics that we need to focus on, because at the end of the day, sponsorships are driven off of the base of having reputation and brand and being able to really hit all the markers that the community requires right now, a very sophisticated consumer who's making purchases. One of the most interesting, I think, is CVS. Now, this was going back a little bit, and it's a US example, but they stopped selling nicotine products about 4 years ago and had a decision that cost them millions of dollars. But they just felt that it was unrealistic for a health organization. CVS is a pharmacy in the US, national brand, very large. They felt that it was, that it didn't fit within their health mandate to also be selling nicotine. It didn't make sense for them to have medicenters that were available to low-income populations, and at the same time, on their way out of the appointment, be able to sell them nicotine, which they knew was contrary to their health status. The other one I think is doing a great job is PetSmart. I always laugh because I just, being a person who loves pets but doesn't own one, I just can't wrap my head around the billions of dollars in this industry. And the way that PetSmart has been able to kind of add in a community component, but still sell more product and drive more revenue to their business, I think is fantastic. And the last one I always talk about, which I think is amazing, an amazing example, Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire has marketing and reputation, brand awareness down to an art and a science. They will make you feel Canadian even if you've never stepped into a Canadian Tire store. And during COVID, what we noticed was that they really kind of put on some excellent programming around We Are Canadian, making you feel a real kind of affinity to being Canadian, we're all in this together. They somehow are able to capture that magic that happens when your values mesh with the community that you're dealing with. So they understand their audience, they understand their purchasing audience, and they provide them with certain programs and incentives to come buy more product. But they also understand their, like myself, who I think has been in a Canadian Tire once with somebody else and just was overwhelmed by the number of products from camping to car parts. I can't understand that business model. but it works, and it works really well because the advertising brings us all together as we are all Canadians. So I think that's a really good example of how reputation and brand really works to increase the positioning of a brand.
Yeah, excellent. We have one last question here that came in from the participant that touches on both the presentation itself and the social purpose, but then Brent, the example that you just provided. So the question is, when we term social purpose, we are starting to see more emphasis on it of investment into social enterprises such as incubators, collaboration spaces, etc. Do you see the future of sponsorship more of investment, and what will activation look like?
So my opinion is, I think you'll see, you're going to see some more of that. It's just a shift in those dollars. But if I am a company and I'm going to put money into an incubator, it better be related to my line of business and that there's going to be an outcome. So I go back to what I said earlier, is that these are shifting into more integrated programs. The real success in the future will not be selling a sponsorship or donating money or buying advertising. It will be an integrated program that allows, and that may include social enterprises, because those are no different than an investment in a sponsorship, advertising, or a donation. They're all investments, and it's just where we put our money. So I honestly believe you will see more of this. It will take time. There will be, like anything else, the leaders on the front end of the curve, and the late adopters will come in really late. But in the bulk of them, we're probably 5 to 7 years away before that large group of adopters is there. I think that the people that are really going to be able to be successful with it will be the early adopters, and they've already started. Yeah,
perfect. Christy, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'm really excited and interested to see how this all pans out. TELUS has launched a $100 million TELUS Social Incubator Fund, one of the largest funds in North America, just to be able to invest in products that are going to help people in communities. And I truly think that this is the new normal. So once we're done with COVID and we move into new normal and strategy, it's going to be about social purpose for larger brands like mine. It's going to be about investing in things. Now, whether that thing is a sponsorship, a donation, or a social enterprise, it's investing in things that are going to leave the community in a better place than when we got there. It's going to be about a journey, and it's not necessarily going to be about grants. It could be that a company who's really good at creating a product, like a vaccine, will actually create more vaccines and proactively focus on that as their strategic investment in community. We may actually see a shift away from grants, because grants are really time consuming and they're usually short term. So, what is the real impact of that? Whereas creating something like a vaccine, or perhaps an electronic adaptation to something for a disabled community. I think there's really important things that need to be developed by companies and that can be developed by companies, and they just haven't been, because that's not the way that companies have been working in the past. Going forward, I think we're going to spend a lot more time on research and development of products that we would call social purpose based, that are basically going to make communities stronger. And by doing that, it just means that sponsorship becomes a little bit more complex around where do you jump into that double Dutch scenario? What's the right time to jump in? So I don't see social enterprise as a competitor to sponsorship. I just think it's a really clear indicator that the world we live in has changed, and that consumers expect more from brands. 78% of consumers expected brands to help and put a lot of thinking into helping to solve this COVID issue. That's something new. The Edelman Trust Barometer shows that corporations, their reputation's going up, and charities, their reputation has come down. So it's leveling the playing field around what we used to do and really focused on what is the new way forward. I think that's what COVID's done for us, is it's really kind of peeled away the layers to make it really clear that business as usual is not going to be the future. and that we're not in Kansas anymore. Like, we are definitely somewhere new. And I don't think anything's going to look the same post-COVID, including how we deal with sponsorships.
Yeah, awesome. What a great conclusion to the session. I think we've heard both today as well as in Brent's first session that really that new normal, it's about a new normal. It's not about returning to the old normal. It's about that new normal. So thank you so much, both of you, for this very enlightening session today. That is a wrap. Our next session is coming up on January 14th, and we are bringing together a powerhouse of industry leaders to discuss the state of the sponsorship industry. So I wish all of you a very wonderful holiday season and all the best, and we will see you in 2021. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, clear.
Oh yeah, we're the six. I'm glad there's still 6 people there, Brent.
Here, just give me a second. I'm just gonna lock it so nobody can come
Hey,
back
nice tree,
in.
Arlene.
Okay, they're all out and I've locked it so nobody can come back in.
Okay.
Whew, okay. I was a little nervous it was gonna run really short, but thank you. You extended this to right perfect timing. And
Oh, we're professionals.
yeah, sorry. Christy, I should have, and Aaron and Brent, we should have walked through what to do if something happened when in the middle of someone speaking. Brent, you did a nice cover for Christy there when it did interrupt. And actually on the second round, that was absolutely perfect.
It
was. But yeah, no, good job. Christy, what slide was missed? You were saying slide 2, but is that the one with introducing you and Brent and who you were? Like the names?
No, Christy went to her notes from the previous version, which had you talking about that slide. You moved that slide back, the one about, which one was it? So the slide, and I just have them on paper here, so I don't know what pages they are, but the one that said, do companies need to have their sponsorship marketing in their mix?
Yeah.
That was originally farther up.
Ah,
and
okay.
so you went into that one, and then you looked and saw, oh no, so you went back to the one that in the lands of odds, sponsorships must have 4 components.
Oh my gosh, I was like, I can't wait to see the playback, because I'm like wondering if I'm like deer in the headlights going, holy shit, what is wrong?
No, you
What's
weren't.
happening?
It was,
no, it was good.
The segue, like nobody knew, like Brent, you, Arlene, Aaron, you guys didn't know, but I knew exactly what happened, because remember that used to be up front?
Yeah.
And
totally.
you just, so and I knew, okay, she's going to come back to it. I'm not worried. She's going to jump back. So.
Yeah, that was funny. I can't believe my video dropped. You know, it's funny because I'm with TELUS. It's like, are you kidding me right now? I'm going to phone our wireless guy and say, what the hell? We look terrible on a thing, like, oh.
Well, you should
have apologized and said, yeah, sorry, everybody. I ended up having to go on a shock connection today.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, like I'm not at my own house right now. And so I'm on a Shaw connection. Yeah.
This Shaw connection's terrible. Yeah. But good. Well, I did it. So it came off sounding good, and it worked out okay.
Did it?
Yes.
Like, I'll tell you, the whole time I was doing that middle section in the sandwich, like I'm thinking, I'm just babbling like a talking head here. Like, did it come off okay, or was
No, it did. Yeah. It did. You guys provided, like, the examples were really good.
Christy, what did you think?
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was I mean, I don't know what people want to get out of this thing, right? That's the key thing, is what are people wanting to get out of it? But I think if it was me attending that session, I would have written a lot of notes, and the examples were easy to understand. So I'm curious about the feedback to see if they also felt that way, or if they felt we missed the mark, or, you know.
Are you guys doing an evaluation at all, or can you?
No, we haven't. We did not on the first. We weren't planning to on this one. I don't know, Arlene.
I'll tell you, just from presenter perspective, it would be a big help. I never really thought about it after the first one. That I had done one for Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. They paid me to do a webinar for their conference, right? And so I did it, and I got the feedback on it like a month later, but it was really helpful. I always ask for that so that I know where I can improve. But because this is all virtual and it's new to us, any feedback we can get, and I'll tell you what came out of it. And I told both Aaron and Christy this, I think, yesterday. Brent, you told me before the first session that I needed to have, because I said, I don't want my video up and going because I'm going to look at my notes and stuff like that. And I want to just put up my name or something else, or a picture. And you said, no, people want to see you. And I said, okay, you're the professional, great, so forth. Prior to that, I had done this thing for SPRA, Saskatchewan Parks and Recreation Association. And they allowed me to put up my picture. And the biggest complaint or comment or takeaway for me, there were only like 35 people in this session, and 9 comments on, I would have liked to have seen Brent live. The PowerPoint was good, but he should have had his picture live. Other presenters were live. Was he, that type of stuff. And so stuff that I can learn from this session would be great.
Yeah, and I think the other piece is it helps us to understand how much content is too much, or, was it balanced between content and example, when it helps us to write the next session. So if people come back and say there was too much discussion about advertising, not enough about sponsorship, then we know that maybe next time, we need to balance that. Or if they say, I loved the discussion about reputation and advertising, then we know we can add a section, we can add in a new session on that because there's interest in that. Social purpose always seems to come up. We could do a session around social purpose.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of gold within those surveys, especially with a smaller group. And I think if we leave it open-ended and give them some kind of like incentive, like I would say, I don't know if maybe we can give them some incentive to fill it out, then I think we get a lot from that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
Sorry, just created work for you guys.
Well,
week before
probably,
Christmas.
Since the survey is probably more important to you guys for the content than it is to Brent or I, maybe just fire us off some questions that you want us to ask. And I don't have no problem sending it out. we need to know what it is that you want us to ask.
Yep.
You bet, Arlene.
Sure.
Yeah, we can totally do that.
And then Brent, Taylor, we can come up with some kind of incentive. We've done that before, and that usually helps get a few more responses back.
Yeah, and I think incentives are always good, but I also think looking at this list, this is a pretty dedicated group. I mean, the people that I know on here would probably fill it out. I probably know about 40 or probably 55% of the people here. Some of these are your clients, so they'll probably figure them, So the incentive doesn't have to be huge. I mean, you can use my book. I'm looking at the list. A lot of them already have it, but you can use a copy of, Reality Check as an incentive. I'm not sure it's a big incentive, but it could be, right? So.
And it looks like our numbers were pretty good too. We had 27. It peaked at 27.
No, I saw. Oh yeah, I'm counting the others because I saw 33 on there.
No, there's 6 of us. We had 6 computers, but 27 was the max, and then it settled down at about 25 for the most of about 90% of the time.
Yeah, I noticed
And
that.
then it didn't really drop at the end. It just at the end we only lost we lost 5
Yeah.
in the last 10 minutes. So we maintained it. We maintained
Which is 10 minutes
20
after 11 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah. When 11 hit, they started dropping. So so numbers look good. I was hoping we're gonna get a little just over 30, but our total overall registrants were slightly lower this time because we did not give out free ones this time, which we did last time.
Other than Christy.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Christy, you actually got to. Yeah, your 2 people were. I don't know if they ended up. I didn't notice if they ended up joining or not, but you had 2 people that joined in or had registered. I sent them the link, so if they're saying they didn't get it or something, they did get it. But I'll include them in the list for anybody that was registered. I'll send. I'm going to send the link to access the recording so they can take a look at it.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. Was the speed okay? I wasn't sure.
And Christy, I sent you a link. Can you go to speedtest.net and just do a check on your internet?
Oh,
I really need to know what your upload speed is just for my future reference.
Okay, hold on. Let me do that right now.
So speedtest.net.
He did this with me.
Yeah, it's important because I'm recommending to speakers that they have at least 5 megabit upload. And if you're over 5, that matters to me because you had an issue if you're over that, which then I'm going to start telling speakers, oh, you better have 10. Yeah,
and you know what? I think the problem with mine, it's an ongoing issue, but I think the problem is that it goes in cycles. What is it?
Well, you could have an intermittent issue with your internet. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because if your speed's okay, like if your upload speed is okay, then it's probably it would most definitely be an intermittent issue. That's specific to your internet.
I'm just running the speed test now.
And then it'll give you the big number first, which is your download, which doesn't matter. It's the second smaller number that matters.
Yeah, I'm getting 6.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's what happens is that Sorry.
So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what happens is it kind of burps and then cuts me off. Mm-hmm. And then, I get back on and it's fine. So I'm going to have a little discussion with my my people. Say, what the heck?
You can't because this wasn't. Tell us this was you.
Yeah.
But Christy, note that is your internet connection. That's not your speed. You are correct on that because a 6 megabit upload should not be at all hesitating on video.
Yeah.
And just for the 3 of you that if you speak, for those that speak, which this is an instruction I should have gave you at the start, is if you do have video like connectivity issues like that, just turn your camera off and continue on, because just pushing audio, uploading audio is far smaller than needs far smaller bandwidth than doing video and audio combined. So in the future, if you do have that issue, just turn your camera off and try again, and you should be fine. Arlene, anything else? Are we good? Oh, you're muted.
We're good.
Well, thanks for
awesome.
the opportunity, you guys. It was awesome. Love doing these. Really enjoyed it. I'm getting feedback on my string of just people saying things like, you and Brent have really good chemistry. And I was like, yeah, because I'm pretty well going to kill him at any moment for getting me into all sorts of trouble. But, so I think it went well, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. And Aaron, excellent job as usual. You and I will need to do some kind of thing on social purpose together. Hey, let's do that. Let's plan for that. Brent and Arlene, have a wonderful holiday season. Thanks again. And here's to next year in person, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hey,
thanks, Christy and Brent. We really appreciate the time you put into it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
And thanks, Aaron, too. Great
Take
job,
care.
everybody. Bye.